Hello and welcome to the Jonesing for Sports podcast, the ultimate podcast for Michigan sports, both college and pro. I'm your co-host, Cody, joined by my brothers, Travis and Brandon. Today, we're going to provide our updated commentary on the Detroit Lions' dream start to the season, as well as give a quick preview to the Michigan game against Minnesota this weekend. So don't go anywhere because we've got all that and a whole lot more coming your way right now.
Welcome to the Jonesing for Sports podcast.
I miss the days when you guys would let me redo my takes when I just get all tongue-tied. I don't know why. I feel like I do that at least once every intro.
Those days are long past.
You're a pro now, Code.
I wish that were true.
And we're more savage.
We're more savage, and I also still don't get paid for this, so I don't think you can even call me a pro for it.
Oh, man. Well, before we get into Cody's intro topics, my shower thought isn't totally a question for you guys. It's more of just, I wanted to share some news with you that I think you'll be really happy. And I'll give you a clue, and you guys can tell me what it means. Have you ever been sitting across from somebody just having a conversation and just fighting the urge to just scream out, yeah!
Shorzy Season 2.
Shorzy Season 2 is coming at the end of this month.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
October.
That's fantastic news.
I think it's October 27th. I know, me too.
I didn't even know that they started filming.
I fought the urge to text you guys about it today because I wanted to just share that with you tonight.
Yeah.
And just share in the happiness that will bring us.
Man, that's awesome.
Man, so did they just announce it was coming back and it was going to be the end of the month, or has it been coming back for a while? Because I had never heard that there was a Season 2.
I am not sure. I just saw it today.
Well, I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
What a good show.
That is one of my favorite shows.
Great music, great
like
cast,
all time.
Great lines. So witty. We got
as
into
far as
that show.
One season shows go, probably my all-time favorite.
Whew, that's big. We got into that show the night after we went to Bloomington for the Michigan IU football game last year. Good
Watched
day.
the whole season in one night.
Yeah.
That was a fun day. Good times.
If you haven't gotten in on that action yet, watch Shorzy. Worth the watch.
It sure is. It'll make you want to move to Canada and play hockey. And maybe punch someone.
Man, that just immediately boosted my mood 20%. That is just fantastic, Trav.
I thought you would appreciate that. So
Yeah. I mean, I hope I don't bleed out before that time comes, but just the thought of that show finally actually being made, that is just fantastic news.
And for the listeners who are wondering why you're bleeding out, Code, you want to say what's going on with you?
Well, I was going wading for some fishing, and I was getting ready to record and just noticed that my ankle was covered in blood. So I definitely sliced it on something when I was out wading. But man, no Band-Aids are enough. That blood will not be stopped. So it is quite the situation over here, but we are recording nonetheless.
Have you found the cut? Like, is it cut?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's the weird thing is like it looks like a cat scratch, and there's nothing coming from about 95% of it, and there's this one dot that just, if you leave it there for half a second, it starts spitting out blood, and it just can't be contained.
I was wondering if it was like maybe a leech. You got a leech who sucked you.
Nah. Well, I mean,
Crushed it.
He could have been there in the past, I guess. He's not there anymore. But even then, I've never had a leech do that much damage.
Speaking of blood-sucking gross creatures, I was watching River Monsters last night. Jeremy Wade is one of my heroes. And I was purposefully trying to avoid watching the episode where that little blood-sucking fish swims up the guy's pee stream.
Knew you were going to say that.
I was purposely trying to avoid it. Like, I saw a title of one of the episodes, and I went, nope, I don't want to watch that one because I think it might be on that one. So I tried to click on one where it was just going to be a huge catfish. And it was a huge catfish for 15 minutes of it, and then it was the ending. It was that stupid bloodsucker, and I was so
Can't
upset.
escape it.
There's like 40 episodes I could have chose from, and I purposely was trying to miss it, and it's the one I selected. Stupid.
It's because they find you.
Scarring.
Dread it, hide from it. The pee-pee sucker finds you all the same. It's inevitable.
Oh, man.
So,
Well, yeah, get us into
yeah.
it, Code.
That was some good news turned to some really weird and gross news. But back to the good news. We got some mailbag questions to address today, boys. That just
Hot
fills
dog.
my heart with joy. So we're going to go ahead and get right into that. Questions courtesy of none other than our Discord Inquisitor, Jaren. Starting off with a banger, we got, I'm not really sure I like to give this event attention, but here we are. If the Lions played the Chiefs after week 2, would we get the win? Would the Taylor Swift effect, yuck, give the NFL reasons to push the Chiefs to a win? So that goes on to say, also, this couldn't go any better for the NFL or Kelsey. They're enjoying this limelight from her presence. Or would the win even be sweeter with more eyes on the game, and we show all the Swift fans who the best in the game is? And Jaron, to his credit, says he already regrets asking that question. But I actually like that question. I think it's worth talking about because if you look on your phone or your TV, you can't go more than 5 minutes without seeing something about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. It's everywhere. Like you said, the NFL is greatly benefiting from it, and the Chiefs are already the NFL's team. So I think that's something that's certainly worth talking about, but I want to see what your guys' perspective on this is. If we were to play the Chiefs after week 2, would we have gotten the dub?
I'll let you guys go first.
I definitely have thoughts on that. So, might be a little bit controversial for a couple reasons. I don't think we would have gotten the dub. And the reason for that is because I actually don't think... I don't take as much of offense to that comment of the Lions win over the Chiefs having a big asterisk, because I think Travis Kelce is not quite the same as missing any other player. If you watched that game against the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had absolutely nobody to throw the ball to. If he had one competent receiver, I think the Chiefs end up winning that game. And he didn't. He didn't have one guy he could throw to. There were so many drop passes. It was just an absolute... Like, it set wide receiving back 10 years, that game did. And it was a pain to watch. If he has Kelce, I think that ends up going a lot differently. And if you want to talk about the whole Taylor Swift effect, the Chiefs having even more reason to give the Lions a win, I don't think they needed any more reason. I mean, you go no further than watching that tackle line up offsides, like 40% of his snaps, or not offsides, but you know what I mean, out of formation, and they just let it go. And you look at all the times Hutch gets held in that game, and they just let it go. I think the NFL already had what they wanted to do from their refs. They already were doing everything they could, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs couldn't win that game because they didn't have the personnel they needed. I think with Kelce, they do win that game, and I don't think the Taylor Swift effect is going to necessarily give them more more reason to help the Chiefs win. I think they're doing that regardless.
I disagree, Code, but for a little bit different reasons. Travis Kelce obviously would have gave them some sure hands to throw to, which they didn't have week 1. However, I don't think that mattered, because the NFL would have found a way to get the Lions that win. That was in the script for week 1, and I explained this to you so many times. Don't f me. You know why. The Chiefs are obviously the NFL's team. Obviously the NFL's team. But you get away with them being the NFL's team by making them lose week 1 in front of a record crowd. And now you got all year to just cater to them. Same thing in week 2, where I said, I think the Lions could lose this game to Seattle for the same reasons. The Lions are a darling of the NFL this year, and they're going to get some catering. But you get that early season loss, and now you can call it whatever way you want, NFL. Because you're not doing anything to the game. You're not in control. The Lions lost to the Seahawks. So, that being said, to Jaren's question, yes, if this game was played next week, this coming week was Chiefs versus Lions, Chiefs. Because Chiefs last week set the most viewed game on a Sunday since Super Bowl, like many years ago Super Bowl. That's bonkers. And the reason was because they had a lot higher female viewership because of Taylor Swift. The Taylor Swift effect is in full force. The Chiefs might never lose again as long as Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are dating. Unless it's in regards to helping the Chiefs win the Super Bowl and get more viewers. That could happen. I don't believe that the NFL is not rigged. I said it last week. The WWE has refs as well, and we know that that's a fake sport. So, to answer Jaren's question, I think it did matter. But the Lions are really good. If there's not like conspiracy stuff involved, the Lions are a really good team, and they're clicking even better now than they were week 1. That first half against Green Bay was, I think, the best half I've ever watched of one of my favorite teams play. It was amazing watching that happen. They just looked like a really good team as well. So if they played the Chiefs again, I think it'd be a really good game. And maybe they could, like you said, Jaren, show those Swifties who the real Lions are, and that'd be awesome. But that's my 2 cents on the whole situation. Also, Blake Lively was at the game last week with Taylor Swift, and she wasn't talked about at all. That's how big Taylor Swift is. Blake Lively's so much better than Taylor Swift. Come on, world.
I'll weigh in, but I want to go off track for just a second because I don't really understand like the Taylor Swift craziness around the NFL. So I want you guys to give me one NFL, like maybe your favorite NFL player, and then give me one female musical artist that you really just don't care for.
So give you an NFL player randomly?
Who's your favorite that you like?
And you're talking about a singer. Is it somebody we actually don't like, or just like
that you
we
just
couldn't
don't
care
really pay
less?
attention to? It could care less about, yeah.
Okay.
I love Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay, Amon-Ra St. Brown and
Ice Spice.
Okay, so it comes out that
Great choice.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is dating Ice Spice. Are you all of a sudden going to start streaming like an Ice Spice concert? Does that interest you guys?
No.
No, I hate Ice Spice.
Yeah,
I just
you went
don't
the
understand.
wrong direction there.
I don't understand. Like, why is Taylor Swift bringing so many people to like? If you're a Taylor Swift fan and you don't care for football, you don't watch
It's
football
a cult.
otherwise.
Yeah,
why
that's
do
the
you
thing.
want to
is that you
watch a
don't-
football game?
You don't fully understand Taylor Swift fans.
No,
They
I don't.
are. I mean, you can be a casual, but she has, millions upon millions that are crazy people, actually obsessed with everything in her life. And so, they know every little thing about her songs, her pets, and also her dating life. And these people, I don't want to talk down too much to them, but you would think that they literally have no job or anything else to do in their lives. So if she's going to start dating somebody, all of a sudden they're going to look into every little detail of that relationship and that person's life. They are the biggest super sleuths. The biggest kind of joke on the internet right now regarding this whole Swift effect is like Taylor Swift fans, because they're the biggest super sleuths and whatnot. Like, week 1, they're just like, who are these guys in the striped shirts? Like, which team are they? And then week 16, they're just like, oh, Nick Sirianni's going man here? What a stupid mistake. They're going to get absolutely torched. Because they just read into everything and they figured out, they're pretty smart. And so they're like Taylor Swift's personal QAnon. I think that might be like a way to phrase it. Like they are
Dang.
that
Okay.
dedicated, and I mean, a lot of times, stuff that they're going to say is absolutely crazy, but they figure quite a bit out. By the way, I'm not trying to praise QAnon, but it's conspiracy theories. It's digging super deep into the most minute of details. Those are the type of people you're dealing with. They're not just like casual fans of any sort of singer. They are 100% a cult.
Okay, well that helps me understand. But that's hard for me to understand that. But I'll answer Jaron's question. I don't believe the Lions could beat the Chiefs, even if I actually do think the Lions are the better team right now, even with Travis Kelce joining the fold, even with Chris Jones. The Chiefs are very good. They're very good. But did you guys watch any of that Jets game?
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to, but I was going to talk about that. I saw the lowlights.
So for once, actually, I thought Patrick Mahomes looked human.
Mhm.
And I don't know, maybe there was something going on there, but he just had a bad game. That's like you can really almost never say that about Patrick Mahomes. He was bad, and there are a couple plays. The one in particular that I really took issue with is it would have been his third interception of the night. He threw the ball up, and the safety undercut the route basically and picked it off. Now, as the safety catches the ball, the ref throws a flag, and he calls defensive holding. And as you watch the replay, if there was a defensive holding, which it was hand fighting, they do that every play, by the way. But if you wanted to call defensive holding, it happened a full 3 to 5 seconds before the flag was thrown. The flag was thrown because he saw the ball was picked off. 100%. I think that is as clear an evidence of basically the ref saying, no, we're not letting the Jets beat the Chiefs than you could almost ever see. And that's just one play. Another play, you see one of the more egregious holds. I mean, we see it every week with Hutch, but just another terrible hold, like another 3 to 5 second long hold, and then Patrick Mahomes escapes and, of course, makes the play. So, I mean, the Jets are terrible, but they have a good defense, and Zach Wilson wasn't as bad as usual, but they're not allowed. They don't have Aaron Rodgers. They're not a good storyline. You can't beat the Chiefs, especially, I mean, the NFL's Instagram, their official Instagram's bio said the Chiefs are 2-0 as Swifties. They're celebrating the fact that the Chiefs are undefeated ever since Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have become an item. It's an agenda. So, no, as long as they stay together, the Chiefs are untouchable. So yeah, I think that there's not a really much of a chance. And the thing about the Lions, I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. We want to talk about the Lions by themselves, but it really ties in. The thing about the Lions' victory over the Packers was that I saw some of that old nature creeping in, where the refs started to call a bunch of crap on the Lions. Like, hey, this game's getting out of control, and we're going to lose viewers if the Lions continue to dominate. So the Packers started to crawl back into the game, and the Lions eventually just slammed the door shut. It took longer than you would have liked, got uncomfortable, but the Lions were able to overcome a absolutely atrocious effort by the officials to make that game closer than it should have. On a game where there's less difference in talent or ability, the Packers are not as good as the Chiefs, where the Lions are going to beat the Chiefs in a game. Maybe they might win by one score at most, not by multiple scores. And that's the type of game that can be completely changed by untimely calls, or in the Chiefs' case, timely calls. So that's why the Lions' victories are so sweet, because you feel like you beat two teams at once, or maybe you beat the whole world because everyone's been against the Lions. The NFL's against the Lions. But in that case, I just don't feel like it's possible, because it's going to be a closer talent gap. And then, of course, you can't touch Patrick Mahomes and you can't touch Taylor Swift. So,
Well, that kind of brings up an interesting point, Bran, because, I mean, obviously the Lions are never going to be on the Chiefs level in terms of being favored by the NFL. But you look at kind of recent events, So you have Hard Knocks last season with the Lions. They kind of become quote unquote America's team. And then, all of a sudden, Lions are 3-1. Lions really got a head of steam behind them. People are buying into Campbell. They're bringing in the views. Is there any chance that things are starting to change a little bit and the NFL is maybe looking a little bit more favorably upon the Lions or is trending in that direction? I think the main reason I think that is with the recent news of Jameson Williams. They lessened his suspension. He's going to be active for Week 5. What gives? Why they've had the entire season to make that decision. Why now? Like, what is their ulterior motive for that? So,
why now?
Trav, I get the feeling that you have a different take on this than Brand.
My take is the Lions are one of the hand-picked darlings of the NFL currently. I'm not saying that's going to last very long. We got to make the most of it. But yeah, you explain to me why JMO's suspension is. I know the other guy who was suspended in the league, his was adjusted as well. The league put in their new policy. But it was right after the Lions beat Green Bay. The Lions are looking pretty hot. And having JMO's going to be real nice. That seems weird. And we shouldn't call that out because we're Lions fans and we love to see JMO back early. So that does seem weird. I'm not saying that the Lions being the darling of the NFL is going to make them Super Bowl team. But it's definitely, they're one of the hand-picked darlings this year. And I'm just going to enjoy it until it lasts. Because I think the Lions are a good team also. Like, let's put away all this conspiracy aside. The Lions are a darn good team. And that's really fun. I'm going to enjoy that. But also, if the Lions are going to get some NFL rulings to go their way, some calls to go their way, some rulings to go their way, I'm going to enjoy that as well while it lasts. Because that's never happened in my life. There's literally highlight reels of why it sucks to be a Lions fan and how the NFL is Detroit versus everybody. And if there's a nugget of truth to that's not the case this year, then let's soak it in. Because that would be mighty nice. But the Lions are going to have to be a good team still, and I think they are. So it's both things, I think, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think you could probably count on one hand the teams that would have the, I don't know if the word is media advantage or script advantage, however you want to say. I think the Lions definitely are a darling this year. I think they will never surpass a team like a Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs or probably like the Dallas Cowboys.
You mean a Taylor Swift-led Chiefs?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. But they definitely have climbed that ladder. So, yes, we should enjoy it. I think they're definitely the darlings of the NFC North, which, I mean, it's always been the Packers. And then if it wasn't the Packers, the Vikings had some big years there. So, yeah, it's a brand new day for the Lions. Going back to the Packers game, I don't ever remember in my entire life a game where the Lions whipped on the Packers so badly. 27-3 at the half. I was beside myself. I didn't know how to handle my emotions. It was such a new experience. And then, you go back to the Chiefs win in week 1. These Lions are setting records for my lifetime. It's new personal bests of how they can shock me with some of these results. So maybe I'm setting myself up for some disappointment. I hope not. But I'm so excited about the new levels that they're achieving. And I hope that they're going to even surprise me with the levels they can get to. And we don't even have to worry about maybe some of those storyline battles they'll have to fight until, late in the season.
I came home late after that Lions game. I was watching it at a buddy's house. And when I got home, Cody's just laying on the couch and just says, just listen. And he's watching the post-game coverage. And it's just the Lions fans at Lambeau were so loud. And I came home, it was probably 30 minutes after the game. And they're still, at least. They're still chanting super loud. And just overtook Lambeau. Heck, Lambeau, the Green Bay Packers put out a statement about how much the Lions overtook Lambeau.
Embarrassing. The Lambeau Field is a historical venue that many NFL fans want to attend. Okay. Losers. Well,
That was a big time loser statement to
dude,
put out.
you gotta just shut your mouth and just take your licks.
Take that on the chin. But they put out this horrible statement. Embarrassing.
Such a Packers thing to do.
But you talked about Green Bay and some of those calls. Cody, I think, even tweeted about it. With that, it's just you can't go a full Lions Green Bay game without the refs getting involved somehow. That call where Green Bay threw that deep pass with triple zeros on the clock, that was amazingly bad. That game got down to a 2-score game, almost a 1-score game.
Oh, can I jump in real quick? I have seen so many idiots on Twitter say, well, they have to look down at their watch and then look at the snap. It's the different rule. That is for the play clock. The game clock, if it hits 0, instantly the play is dead. So know your rules before you're spouting off on the internet, you idiots. If the clock hits 0, you can't do a play. And there's like a full half to full second of them not snapping the ball after it hits 0. Unbelievable. They just want the game to stay close so people keep watching because Amazon has paid a lot of money to stream the Thursday night game. So you better not let that game get out of hand. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you go, Cody.
What other games are out there, like sports, where you can complete a play after time has expired and it's not reviewable?
That's the easiest thing to review, too. Like, look at it and say, oh, the clock does say 0. That play didn't actually happen during the game.
Could you imagine, like, you have an NBA playoff game coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
Dude hits a 3 to win the game a half second late, but the refs couldn't tell in the moment. So, we got real fortunate there, boys. We're just going to leave it. Like, no, that would never happen. But this is something that gives the NFL just that little extra sliver of control. And I don't know if I'm ready, just kind of jumping back into the former conversation real quick, to call the NFL or the Detroit Lions NFL darlings just yet. I think the NFL's motivation might just be the Lions are exciting. We're going to keep them exciting for as long as possible. If a game's getting out of hand, hey, we might make sure that doesn't quite get too out of hand. Hey, they got some tough games coming up. We'll give them JMO. Sure, let's put some gasoline on this fire, see how exciting they can get. But heaven forbid they touch our Chiefs. And, they beat the Chiefs week 1. I don't think I was ever on board with the idea that it was the narrative for the Lions to beat the Chiefs week 1. Because my reasoning for
it was.
Trav says yes, Brandon says no. I also say no, because I don't think the NFL has ever tried to be discreet in their helping of Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think they're just going to do that no matter what. And the Jets game was clear evidence of that. They do not care how blatant it is. They're going to help them win if they can. And also, they tried to help them win against the Lions. They just did not have the manpower. A fully loaded Chiefs team has the manpower, clean on injuries, with the refs' help. You're probably not winning that game. The Eagles could tell you that last year in the Super Bowl. So that's all I really have to say on that. But
to Cody's
the
point,
Lions are really exciting. I've never had anything like this in my life, watching them beat up on the Packers as they did this past Thursday.
To add on to what Cody's saying about the Lions maybe not being darlings, I think you're right that they're probably just driving views and clicks. In 2 games so far, maybe there's some I'm forgetting, the Lions have had the rules expert come on and basically say, yeah, the refs really got this 100% wrong. Like, a rules expert is there to make sure that the refs don't look too bad. And basically to say, like, yeah, that was targeting, or no, that wasn't targeting, or yeah, he was out of bounds, or maybe, I think the call will stand on the field. It is very rare to hear them say, the refs botched this. And against the Chiefs, he said, yeah, I can't believe, he's lined up illegally every play.
Counterpoint. How many of those moments affected the end of the game, though?
Well, I don't really know what you're trying to get to there.
That's very hard to quantify.
It is, but in the Chiefs situation, They called that at the end of the game when it mattered. They said he was lined up illegally.
They called it at the end of the game when that game was over.
They made sure it was over.
I think they called it to basically be like, yeah, we called it. We didn't ignore the whole game.
Yep.
My point is, in that happened, and then of course the triple zeros. They said, yeah, this play should not have happened. 100% was called incorrectly. So just to add some fuel to the fire, and then we talk about the Packers game where it was just very obvious they didn't want that game to get too far out of hand. I saw the same thing in the Eagles versus Vikings game a few weeks back. Eagles got up big, real big, and all of a sudden, the Vikings, they started marching down the field, and I started watching their tackles were holding the Eagles' defensive linemen every play, like egregiously, and then there would be offensive pass interference. It wasn't called. It was amazing, the coordinated effort between the officials and the Vikings to keep that game close, because if the Eagles ran away with it, no one's going to keep watching. So, and the Eagles are upper tier team. You would think the Eagles wouldn't get any of that. So I think there's a huge emphasis on making sure games don't get out of hand, regardless of who you are, unless you're the Chiefs, because I think it's probably good for views that the Chiefs kill people because Patrick Mahomes, and we get to see more shots of Taylor Swift celebrating Travis Kelce touchdowns. So there's, I think, a big emphasis on that. So Cody's got a good point there. I think that maybe it's more about just getting the views rather than the lines themselves, because the lines have been on the opposite end of it a lot this year already. So it's a good balance there. But we can move on off of this beleaguered point. I do think that Jaron had one more mailbag question, though.
He did. So, Jaron says, okay, better question. Of all Michigan players, who has the best odds right now to win the Heisman? Wilson, JJ, Corum, or is there anybody else that has a chance?
I
Good
think
question, Jaron.
Corum has the best chance because he is leading the country in rushing touchdowns, and he's just missing on the yards, which as a running back, you can make that up pretty quickly. He could have a couple 200-plus yard games, and then he's smack dab leading the race. Roman Wilson is leading the country in touchdown receptions, which still just my heart is pounding just speaking that sentence out loud. However, his yards are pretty down, and that's only because they don't throw the ball that much. Last game, JJ threw 16 attempts. So we have fallen off a little bit, our balanced offense, but the running game has gotten a little bit more traction. They're able to run the ball pretty well against Nebraska, who has a great run defense. So I have a feeling that Corum is going to take off here, and hopefully Donovan eventually catches up because he's been pretty terrible. But yeah, Blake Corum is my best option. JJ actually leads the entire country in QBR. That's insane. I mean, that's more than the former last year's Heisman. And Caleb Williams has been awesome too. So QBR, what's the other one? He has a top rating somewhere else, but I think he's the most accurate passer, completion percentage as well. However, he also only has like just over 1,000 yards, where I haven't looked it up, but I'm just gonna guess that Michael Penix is probably approaching 2,000. So
he's at 1,999 right now.
Wow, good guess, Brand.
Man, I went over by one. So Bob Barker is really upset with me, but I'm still proud of that guess.
Yeah.
So I think JJ, unfortunately, just isn't going to have the stats, which is it's always going to be the case for a Michigan quarterback, because it's not a system conducive to quarterback stats. But I would say if there's a guy in this conversation, it's got to be Blake Corum.
Yeah, I agree, but it reminds me of a question I think you and Tool Time Thomas had on Football Frenemies preseason, where you guys were discussing what stat line Brock Bowers would have to put up to win the Heisman this year. Mm-hmm. And I think similarly with Roman Wilson, like we've recently seen a wide receiver Heisman in Devontae Smith, but look up Devontae Smith's stats. They were nuts.
Unreal, yeah.
And he had the yards to boot, along with, I forget how many touchdowns he had. It was just nuts.
It was approaching 20, I think.
But Roman Wilson, if he stays on this crazy, he's at 9, I believe.
Is it 8, I thought, right?
Is he at 8 and Blake's at 9?
I think that's it.
I can tell you real quick.
Okay. Either way, 8 right now.
He's at 8.
With almost the whole half a season to go, 2/3. Just short of 2/3 of the season to go. Roman Wilson, this is not going to happen. But he could be close to putting up a 20 touchdown. Imagine if that happened. Okay, hypothetical here. Roman Wilson has 20 receiving touchdowns. Blake Corum has 20 rushing touchdowns. And JJ leads the country in QBR. Who's going to New York for the Heisman?
Not JJ.
I still need the yards for those guys. That's what it comes down to.
That's
I looked up Devontae Smith's yards, or his stats. I even underestimated it. It's crazy. His senior year at Alabama, he had 1,856 receiving yards and 23 touchdowns. He also ran for a touchdown, so
24 touchdowns.
24 total touchdowns. Yep. That's stupid.
Yeah. So
I think
Roman
the
Wilson,
safe answer is got to be Corum. You know, Corum is already a familiar name when you talk about going to New York. He didn't go, but I mean, like, he's already in talks, even if he continues to kind of underperform in relation to 2022. I do think that this award is kind of biased against wide receivers or anybody who isn't a quarterback or running back. So I think that with Michigan's offense, the way things are trending, if we were in a perfect simulation, let's say you're playing NCAA football 13, I think it would be Roman Wilson. The reason being, I don't think Blake has necessarily that top-end explosiveness that he had last year. He's not going to be busting off the same amount of long runs, and his yardage is really going to suffer because of it. You look at these past few games, these past 5 games, he's not getting quite the same degree of carries that he got last year because we are a more balanced offense this year. So because of that, in order to keep up that same level of production, he has to be more explosive. He has to still have those long runs, and he hasn't really shown that ability up to this point in the season. That said, if we're going to keep throwing the ball this much and we're going to keep getting touchdowns through the air, it's going to be to Roman Wilson. He's clearly JJ's favorite target. Even though touchdowns are pretty tough to predict for a wide receiver position, if anybody's going to get him, I think it's going to be Roman and Colston Loveland. And so I don't think his touchdown production is going to slow down that much, even though it's off to a dynamite start. I think Roman's going to have himself a heck of a season. And if he keeps piling those up, some of those are going to be for very, very long receptions as well. So while I don't necessarily see either of those happening, I like that risky, weird pick of saying Roman could get it done.
He's been fantastic.
He's got a little bit, it's not a Heisman moment of a game, but it's a Heisman moment of a play. That play last week against Nebraska, the helmet
Unbelievable.
catch. There's a lot to talk about that play. One, JJ had
a questionable throw.
JJ had an eternity to throw that, and then threw it on the run somehow still, and into double coverage, and into the back of a Nebraska defender's head. And Roman Wilson came up with it. That's what we were begging for with, like, Donovan Peoples-Jones,
JJ
Collins.
is. He knew those two defensive backs would not turn around and try and make a play on that pass. He knew that Roman was going to be the only one to catch it on the back of that safety's head. Perfect throw. Never in doubt.
Well, I think maybe it does reframe how we view Roman, because I think that means JJ sees him as a true jump ball threat, that he could throw it up and Roman could get it. Where before I thought of Roman as he's a speedy guy, he can get the deep ball because he's going to have separation, and he can take the slant for 70 yards because he has unreal speed, or the screen for 70 yards. But if that's the kind of trust JJ has in him, and the fact that he did it, I mean, if, like Trav said, if we had a Nico Collins, we don't care how many guys are around him, just throw it up because he's going to get it. Or, you know, like what Florida State does with Keon Coleman. If Roman adds that part to his game, he really is a true number one receiver. That I mean, you know, I'm the biggest Roman truther out there, maybe tied with KB, and that even shocked me. So
I don't know. Is KB out there going, "That's my son," every time Roman Wilson has a big reception?
He might
Well,
be.
he might be. I don't want to speak for
It's
KB,
possible.
but I mean, if he
Brand,
was your son, you'd be proud too. So just
For
it's one of those
sure.
things.
No, I think there's definitely merit in what you're saying. I do just want to say, though, that I love JJ. From what I've seen so far up to this season, I think you might be giving him a little bit too much credit to have thought that decision through as much as you seem to think he did. I think he just started running and chucked it. He could have that faith. I think he does have faith in Roman Wilson. But yeah, sometimes he's starting to lean into a bit of a gunslinger type of mentality. And sometimes that's a lot of fun, and it produces plays like that. I also think it gives our head coach a heart attack nearly every time. So we'll see, how often he's able to continue getting away with that. I think he might get a little bit of a earful, not an earful, but Jim's going to be like, yeah, don't be doing that.
A gunslinger with a weapon like Roman Wilson, though, you love to see it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't.
It's
if
like
JJ's
Thor
a
and Mjolnir.
gunslinger, yeah, you got and think of
Match made
like
in
some of the
heaven.
best gunslingers in football history. Like they had a great wide receiver with them. I think of Matthew Stafford just in recent memory. He had his favorite target
Nakua.
everywhere. Exactly now. But I was going to go back to Calvin Johnson, then Cooper
I
Kupp,
knew that's where you were going. I tried
now-
to take it a different direction.
and now Puka Nakua, who is a rookie. And Matthew Stafford's just like, I know this guy can get open and I can get it to him. And so he's going to throw it to him a bunch. I think it helps a gunslinger to have a guy you believe in that much. And you can get away with a little bit more as a gunslinger that way. Not saying I want him to be a gunslinger all the time, but we know that JJ has the tools as well. So this is a evolution of JJ that I'm enjoying. I don't know if it's the best form of him, but it's really entertaining.
Again, though, he's got to be able to get those reps in order to find out what he can and can't get away with.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't think prior to this season he had that experience. So now he's able to feel it out, stumble a little bit along the way, and also stumble into some success. Dang it! Take that out. Take it out. You can't keep that one.
That was just a slip of the tongue. It's fine.
Slip of the tongues are fine.
Started thinking
Just
about
like
him
JJ
making out with his
slipped into
girlfriend in
some
the first quarter. And holy.
He did have his girlfriend down there, and they were kissing
On
on
the
sidelines.
sideline
I
during
know.
the game.
He wasn't slipping
That
in
was-
there.
No.
That was on purpose.
Oh, for sure.
You got to think he's going to get in trouble for that. Like,
I don't know.
Coaches are going to see that.
Does he get in trouble?
He doesn't. I don't know. He's kind of the golden boy. He might not get in
Yeah.
trouble.
I think he's fine. That's just good television, baby. But yeah, there's going to be some good and there's going to be some bad with it, but ultimately I think it's going to be positive for his progression as the year goes on.
Yep. Cody, that was one of my all-time favorite tongue slips you've had on this pod.
That's my worst one.
Thank you for that.
And I know that it's going to stay in there because
Yeah, it was money.
because you don't have to live with it.
Cody, you know how many dumb things I've said on this pod that I haven't edited
Nothing that
out?
bad.
And I
Nothing that
and
bad.
I edit, and I don't edit out my stupid stuff.
Sometimes.
Okay, there was one time.
Oh, man.
Oh man,
Yeah,
indeed.
Trav left. He had an entire pod that he thought that Michigan would be better without Mo Wagner, and he left that up there. So
I stand by that take. It might have
I know
been.
you do.
Whatever. What do you guys want to talk about next?
Do you want to preview Minnesota real quick?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's-
whatever.
While we're on football,
We're already
stuff.
on the topic.
Yeah.
I'm out on PJ Fleck, so let's roll into Minnesota and destroy them, boys. Sky Umag, go Gophers.
Row the boat. Forgot that.
I did.
It's a night game, though, correct?
It is a night
It
game.
is a night game.
Okay. I think it'll be a great atmosphere. Minnesota has not impressed me at all. However, they're actually kind of like they're built in the image of a poor man's Michigan, where if you go through their stats recently, they are running the ball pretty well. And
They got a top running back in the country.
And Ethan Kaliakmanis, his stats are like, he'll throw like, basically like JJ. He'll be like 12 of 16 or like 13 of 16, and they'll be like upper to mid 100 yards and a touchdown or two. So
the defense isn't bad either.
Minnesota's defense is always legit. It's one thing that they've got really rolling for them over there. That, and now that their running game's gotten going, it wasn't going at first, and now it is. But I think that really plays into Michigan's hands to play a lesser version of themselves. So I'm feeling pretty confident in this game, because if you stop the run, I don't think Kaliakmanis is the kind of quarterback that can keep Minnesota in the game. I don't think he's going to make like insane plays. He might make a play or two, because he does have a really strong arm. And we've even seen Joe Milton can make some really great plays here and there. But you're going to have to do it consistently to slay a beast like Michigan. So I really like this as a matchup for the Wolverines. But, it's at Minneapolis at night, so weird things could happen. If for some reason the defense doesn't travel well and all of a sudden Minnesota can run the ball, then you're looking at a really tricky game where you're like, oh, this is way too close, and you're kind of feeling a little sick to your stomach the whole time until you get out the other side. So if Michigan stops the run, it could get ugly, kind of like it did at Nebraska, and that's kind of what I think is going to happen. But Minneapolis, man, I've seen some big teams go and struggle there. It's a great crowd there, great atmosphere at night.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a fun game to watch. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. You look at
in what way?
Minnesota's,
and for who?
Huh?
Ugly and not fun to watch for who?
Well,
the
nobody.
Viewers.
Yeah, for the viewers. Because Minnesota, like I said, does have a good defense. So I do think that Michigan is going to be potentially a little bit more vanilla and just try and bully Minnesota. Because like Brandon said, Minnesota plays a Michigan light type of game. They're going to want to try and run the ball. I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of success doing that, said at that time. And the reason I say that is because they've had good success playing against much lesser competition. They started off against Nebraska. That game was only fun for sickos like us who love to watch football that makes other people sick. Played Eastern Michigan, and like the one actually solid team that they've played so far, UNC. I guess the Ragin' Cajuns haven't been terrible, but I think they are going to be way out of their depths when they take on Michigan. And I think when you play a team like Michigan, the way that you get them is having a sneaky good passing game. Usually Michigan's going to be able to out-physical you. Minnesota shouldn't be able to out-physical Michigan, and their passing game ranks 101st in the entire NCAA. Nothing to write home about. Actually pretty terrible. Michigan, I don't think, is going to feel the need that they have to take many chances, so they're just going to try and grind it. And when they do pass, it's going to be more West Coast. We saw, like we said, Gunslinger JJ last week. I think Jim's going to try and put a little bit of a limit on that. Keep it simple. Don't give away stupid turnovers and just grind this game out. I think it's going to be a typical Strangle the Ferret type of performance. I don't think it's going to be close, but I don't think there's going to be too much electricity going on either side of the ball.
I don't believe in Minnesota at all this year. And that might be due to some personal bias after PJ Fleck screwed me out of a 20-leg parlay, but it's neither here nor there. Minnesota started the year against Nebraska in a barn burner. And we didn't know what that game was going to happen until it came down to the wire. Pulled out a barn burner against Nebraska. We just saw Nebraska last week. They're garbage. However, going to Nebraska is tough. And was the Minnesota-Nebraska game at Nebraska or in Minnesota? I can't remember.
I thought it was Nebraska.
Let's just say, either way, if it was in Nebraska, Michigan
it was
just
at
went.
Minnesota.
Okay, easier for Minnesota. Michigan just went into Nebraska and they had their best performance of the year this year so far, and pounded them. I think Michigan's going to go into Minnesota and pound them. I don't think it's going to be too close. But that's why I asked you, Cody, who it was going to be ugly for. Was it going to be ugly just because it's ugly Michigan ball, like when we beat Washington and never passed the ball? Or is it going to be ugly just because Michigan's going to win? Or is it just going to be ugly football? And no one enjoys watching it.
The good news for Michigan fans is that I don't think we'll ever, at least this season, regress back to that type of play. I mean, I think we handed the ball, I think we passed the ball like 7 times in that game, and that might actually be an oversell of how many times we passed it. We ground our running backs into the dirt. And, I mean, that was a step back for running, not just in the fact that we only ran the ball, but also we would only run it right between the A-gaps. It was like the creativity there was completely lacking, and we just wanted to erode Washington's will. There is still... Yeah, it got the dub. It was just... That was ugly to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And there is definitely still a bit of that in Michigan's coaching staff. They want to impose their will. If it's 4th or 3rd and 1, they are going to run it right up the middle every time. Unless they don't. We've seen at least one time this year where JJ kept it for just an absolutely wide open keeper on the outside. And so that's why I think there is actually some merit to what they do there. Because once they finally really need it, they have that. They can give that to JJ and he could really torch a team. But going back to the game in question, I think it's just going to be ugly just because Michigan's not going to try anything crazy. Their whole game plan is just to keep it simple and avoid having costly mistakes that will give Minnesota the chance to keep this game any closer than it should be. I don't think it should be close at all. So it'll be boring in the fact that Michigan should still run away with it, but they won't be doing it in an exciting fashion, and it'll be ugly for Minnesota fans because I don't think they really have much chance in this one. I'm out on PJ Fleck as well, but go ahead, Bren.
How dare you impugn Cade McNamara's name? For he not only attempted more than 7 passes, he completed 7 passes against Washington.
What?
7 of 15, my friend, for 44 whole yards. 15 attempts. That is twice as many as you thought.
That is twice as many
True.
That's probably more than twice as many as I thought. I'm remembering that game.
44 yards of passing.
7 was in there for a reason. It was
in there because that's how many completions they had. They did run the crap out of the ball. Blake Corum had 171 yards, and Hassan Haskins had 155 yards. So they did run really well against Washington.
I want to know what those average yards per carry were.
I want to know what the average yards airtime of those passes were.
Oh yeah,
because that equals about 6 point something yards per catch.
Mm-hmm.
He was not throwing them 6 yards in the air though.
No.
I bet you they were screens.
Yeah. That's what's
Bubble
so bad
screens
about
all
that.
day.
When you run that much, you should be able to have great success with the play action, and that should lead to some deep passes. So to only throw 15 times, but then average like 6 yards per catch is so bad. So yeah, firmly tongue-in-cheek when I rebuke Cody there. Just to
that was also the season where Michigan refused to do any play actions until we played Ohio State.
that is true.
So, to Cade's credit.
They apparently didn't know we could do that.
And it worked.
It did. Actually, what really worked was the fact that Hassan Haskins just bullied them the whole day, and so did the offensive line. And
Very true.
That kind of leads to my next point. I think you are right in a sense. It might not be the most aesthetically pleasing game, but there's a part of me that thinks that Michigan figured something out on the ground last week, and I think they might be able to replicate that against Minnesota. Even though Minnesota has a really good defense, I 100% agree that they do. I think that they're going to be able to run the ball with more success, just like they did against Nebraska. Nebraska, as I mentioned before, going into the game, had the number 1 rush defense, and Michigan really bullied them. I think Michigan can bully Minnesota. A part of that is they started Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, and that pushed Carson Barnhart to right tackle. Carson Barnhart had his best game this year at right tackle, which then helped the right guard, which then helped the center, which then helped the left guard. The whole thing, it's all synergy, baby.
And Blake Corum fell forward a lot. It was some of his hardest running of the year. Love that, too.
So did Donovan Edwards.
Yeah.
It's like these boys had something to prove.
Well, I still think Khalil Mullings even ran better than Donovan Edwards. I don't know what's
the game.
Donovan Edwards
Mullings
needs to get
great.
his butt in gear. And I hope maybe that happens this week.
Not 100% complete for last year, but that game got him some goodwill. That was some great running from Mullings.
Yeah, did love to see it. I'm not sure it holds up against better opponents. We'll see. But, yeah, I think you're close, but I think maybe I'm projecting here. I think Michigan could make it a little bit more fun to watch if they're able to get that run game continuing to evolve, especially behind a more cohesive and maybe a more figured out offensive line.
Yeah, and I hope that's the case. And they did really seem like they were making some strides this past week. We'll see if PJ can pull out any magic and keep this game close. If there's anybody that can do it, it's him. I said I was out on him earlier. That's only because I am just kind of speaking it into existence that he's going to be Michigan State's next head coach, rather. Not that I want that to happen. I just saw that swirling, and now I just can't shake the thought that he's going to be Michigan State's head coach. And I hate that so much. And so I am just... It's like when you have a dream about somebody and then you're mad at them, but you can't remember why. That's what it is.
Yeah,
so,
it's same with me. Like, I feel like it's already happened.
And I'm also
like
just frustrated for you, Trav. He robbed you of that 20-leg parlay. So it's like, you know what? PJ's the worst.
That would have been... could have quit betting because I'd never live up to that day ever again. Because I hit a 10-leg parlay that day, and then that 20-leg. They just went...
You think you would have quit, Trav?
No, I would have just slammed parlays harder, thinking I know all. I know football. And I actually have done that because I felt awesome, and I have just lost everyone since then.
Oh, no.
Oh, Trav.
That's parlays for you.
They're tough.
Last thing on Michigan real quick. Brandon's talking about how the offensive line looked great. Their defensive line has looked really good too, and Minnesota wants to run the ball. That's another reason I think Michigan can win this game soundly, because I think our defensive line is better than Minnesota's run game.
Yep, looking forward to the defense in this one because I'm curious, do they stop the Minnesota offensive rushing attack? I think they can. If they don't, I'm going to have severe PTSD because that was the core issue, I think, with TCU, is TCU ran the heck out of the ball in the playoff. So I don't – they have been literally stone walls all season up to this point. So if they can continue that performance, I think that they're going to shut Minnesota down, and Minnesota will not get into double digits. But if they can run the ball, then that's the matchup I'm watching. That's what I'm really going to have my eye on. So the defensive line, Trav's boy, Braden McGregor, played his best game this year last week.
Of his career, probably.
Josiah Stewart had 2 sacks, which was big. He's been kind of a ghost up to this point. And Derek Moore, who's basically doing a timeshare with Braden McGregor, also had a sack. So you're feeling a lot better now about the defensive line, not just the inside, but the outside as well.
Love to see it.
Well, some good thoughts there, boys. Just a few more thoughts before we kind of wrap things up here. Starting off with a guy that somehow in 2023 made his name back into the Jones and for Sports podcast, Cade McNamara. What do you guys think is kind of his legacy at this point in time? Cade just went down with a season-ending injury down over at Iowa. Won't be playing the rest of the year. And so I guess I'm just curious, how do you guys still view his legacy after all that's happened in his career these past few years?
I think his legacy will improve as the years wear away. So in 10 years from now, I think we look back and remember Cade fondly for leading us to the Big Ten championship and playoff. Right now, his legacy sucks because of the stories of him being a turd to JJ, just being kind of a bad teammate, bad friend, and the things he said as he's left to go to Iowa, it's all so recent. So his legacy, at least as a Michigan player, is rough right now, but I do think as time wears away, it'll get better. But before I knew he was probably out for the season, I saw somebody edited a picture of a child looking out the hospital over Iowa's field and edited it as Cade. In the moment, I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then later that day, I saw he was probably out for the year, and I went, "Oh, well, probably won't talk about that meme I saw on the podcast then." And
you did.
And now I did. Because you know what? In the moment, it was the funniest thing I've seen. The editing. But then when I learned he was out for the year, I did feel bad. And I am sad that he's out for the year because it was fun watching him at Iowa. Whether you were cheering for him to succeed or fail, it was entertaining. And Iowa has been entertaining. And their push for 25 points a game has been entertaining. So he's got an interesting legacy, but I think it will improve over time.
I'm on the other side. I think his legacy is going to deteriorate. I think it already has, like you mentioned. But if he would have just been able to transfer with any semblance of class, his legacy would have been secure as the quarterback that led Michigan back to the promised land. It had been a long time since Michigan had beaten Ohio State or won the Big Ten. They had never been to the playoff, and he was the guy that got to say he did it. Now, at the time when it happened, it was blasphemy to suggest that he actually maybe didn't have as big of a role as you would have thought. The Jonesing for Sports podcast had that opinion that he wasn't doing that much, but the world at large would say Cade McNamara is our guy. He's a leader of leaders, a leader of men, and he teaches very valuable lessons. And now the tide has turned and everyone's saying, actually, you know what? Brandon Peters probably could have done what Cade McNamara is doing. Now that take, I think, is a little too far gone because I don't think Brandon Peters probably could have led that team to the playoff. But any other mediocre to average quarterback probably could have. I think at the time, my preference was that a freshman JJ would have done it. I think the way that Harbaugh reins in quarterbacks, he could have done that, and he would have another year of experience under his belt. My point is, I think he has destroyed his Michigan legacy at this point because he's talked so much trash on his way out. And now at Iowa, he really had an opportunity to elevate them. They basically put a target on their season with this 25 points per game thing. And you know their defense is going to be pretty good to excellent. And if their offense could just be mediocre, he had a chance to not be the guy that only resurrected Michigan football, but could have been the guy to resurrect Iowa football. I am pretty confident in saying that Iowa is not going to make this 25 points per game thing. I mean, they scored 26 against Michigan State, which I guess is good. Michigan State is a dumpster fire. If you're going to put up 40 on someone, it should have been on Michigan State. Maybe Deacon Hill, their backup quarterback, will be a guy. But I think Cade is going from resurrecting a Michigan program, which I don't believe he did, but he got credit for it, to having the opportunity to do the same with Iowa. Now he's going to be present for the end of an empire, because this could be what brings the Ferentz empire to an end. Because if his son is fired, I think the dad goes with him. So he does have another year of eligibility, but it might very well be with a new head coach. And maybe that's good, but man, it's tough. I know I'm hard on Kirk Ferentz, but also he's been consistent. Kind of like Nebraska with Bo Pelini. Like they might win 8 or 9 games a year, but now they would just love to make a bowl. Iowa is in a tough position. All they really need is a new offensive coordinator. That's it. But they've painted themselves into a corner. And so Cade McNamara is going from restorer to destroyer at this point. And I think his legacy is looking bad on the Michigan side and the Iowa side.
Brian Ferentz post-game interviews are must-watch TV right now, though. That dude is nuts. Like his post-game interview
I think he's dumb.
after beating Western, where they scored like 40-some points. He was just crapping on the interviewers like, we're not a bad, like, do you see us? We just scored 40-something. I was like, well, one, you ran up the score at the end. You kept scoring because you know you have to. And two, Western's defense is atrocious.
One of the worst in all of college football. Yeah.
Which makes Western a lot of fun to watch. Like, I enjoy watching Western games because it's a lot of scoring. Their offense is usually pretty good. But then, his next post-game interview was also just ridiculous. They're entertaining. So if you haven't seen them, I encourage you to go watch his post-game interview highlights. There are more highlights in that post-game interview than highlights from his offense.
You got to be careful these days watching some of those videos because the other day on Twitter I saw AI Brian Ferentz give a post-game
AI
presser.
Brian Ferentz is my favorite.
Yeah, and he was saying, like, I mean, you want to talk about not reaching 25 points. How about all those snaps that our defense took the field? They didn't score any points today either. And it's just like, it's like The Onion. Like, I could have seen him saying it. I could have seen it.
I need to check.
It took me a second to realize that it wasn't real.
Maybe I got duped. Maybe I was watching AI Brian Ferentz.
But he has had some spicy ones that aren't AI. But he also has the, like, ridiculous ones that are AI.
Okay, I'll do some research afterwards.
But there's
to see if
enough truth there and enough like horribly ridiculous things that have already been said that you do have to wonder, even when you see the AI ones, like, is that real? It really could be. But Trav, I just want to give you credit just for having your finger on the pulse of this thing from the entire time, just knowing and telling the rest of the world that Cade is an idiot. Even when he was quarterback at Michigan, and you said,
Trav his flowers.
Give him the flowers. Give him the award right now, just for Journalist of the Year. He told us right from the get-go when he was at Michigan, he's an idiot, and that's why he will succeed. And he succeeded at Michigan. And when an idiot's on your side, you love him. You might laugh at him, but you're kind of laughing with him. He'll laugh too because he doesn't know what we're laughing about.
Yeah, but what if we went out?
And then he got kind of caught in the crossfire a little bit. You know, he led Michigan to the Big Ten championship, beating Ohio State for the first time in ages, and yet he's in the midst of this controversy where half the fan base thinks that we'd be a better team the next year with a new quarterback, and that's just unfortunate. And so at that point, you feel bad for the idiot, and you want better for him. He doesn't deserve that. But then, like Brandon said, he had to go and run his mouth, say some stupid stuff on the way out, talking about it's really nice to play for a defense that scores points. Didn't know you could do that. Yeah, now you don't feel bad for the idiot anymore. Now you kind of just want to watch him crumble a little bit. All he had to do was just go with some class, like Brandon said. And I never want to wish injury on anybody. I'm gutted for the guy. I wish that he could play out this last season for the Hawkeyes. There's also a part of me that also wants to see him take the field and struggle every bit with them as they continue to just stumble to the finish line the rest of this year. I want him to be a part of that. I want him to be present because he's just showing game in and game out that he's not the answer. And I'm okay with that being the case if you're going to talk like he did and exit without grace. And so he has had quite a fall from grace from being Michigan's savior to now being a little bit of a laughing stock over at Iowa to now just being injured and not being able to play. That's unfortunate. But I don't think there's really much legacy left. I think he's pretty much destroyed that with the way that he's carried himself. So kudos to you, Trev.
Thanks. I never thought I'd get kudos for calling Cade a dummy, but I'm happy. We'll see where the end of the year Jonesy Awards end up. I think there's some good journalism that's happened out there, but I appreciate the nomination.
Absolutely, friend. And kind of switching a different direction, we would be remiss if we didn't talk at least a little bit about the Red Wings because they are starting up the action for the next season, the 2023 season, this next week. Boys, I'm curious, thinking about the Red Wings, do either of you guys have just one hot take for the Red Wings season this year?
The Red Wings will make the playoffs.
Okay, that was one of mine. I have 3.
Oh, he's got multiple.
Yes, Bran.
Okay. So one of them was they're making the playoffs this year. Other hot take, DeBrincat, the newest addition, he's going to score 30-plus goals.
Ooh, I love it.
Woo.
As a result of him scoring so many goals, the guy assisting him so much is going to be Dylan Larkin.
Mm-hmm.
And Larkin is going to be, again, an all-star. So I don't know that that's maybe a hot take because he's been an all-star a few times. But with the goal onus of goal scoring leaving Dylan Larkin, it's actually going to free him up even more, and he is going to have one of his best career point scoring seasons. So adding in the assists. So between DeBrincat and Larkin, you're looking at 2 all-stars, and that's not to mention some of the other guys that maybe make that leap as well. But those 2 guys in particular are going to be absolute stars.
It's going to be cool. Like, what a duo. Larkin was already, like, kind of Mr. Detroit for this team. He was kind of the guy that this fan base surrounded. I mean, all the jerseys are Larkin jerseys out there. And now you bring in DeBrincat, and, like, to have kind of Batman and Robin up front for Detroit, that's going to be pretty dope. My favorite player on this team is Mo Sider.
Mm-hmm.
Knew it would be.
Yeah.
He's everybody's favorite player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably for hockey Detroit reasons. He's big, and he's young, he's talented, and he just brings the fire. He's very likable.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and be the Scrooge of the pod.
Yes.
I didn't have much of a hot take to give, so I'm glad that you guys went the opposite direction. I don't think the Wings make the playoff this year for really 2 reasons. One is we got DeBrincat. We're getting excited about that acquisition. DeBrincat was he was, like analysts say, the 4th best forward on a Senators team that also did not make the playoffs last season because they didn't score enough goals. So it's fun to have that new addition, but I do not think DeBrincat is just going to all of a sudden be the gas in the engine that this franchise has needed for the last few years. I do think that the Wings will improve a little bit this year, but from what I'm seeing, it looks like analysts don't know all, but they're giving the Wings a 14% chance to make the playoffs. Telling us that they'll make the playoffs is a hot take. So I think in that regard, that prediction is following the assignment. Saying that they won't is not much of a spicy take. But just the thing of it is, they've replaced like 40% of their roster in the offseason, and that's exciting. And I think that we're just a bit more caught up in the excitement about it than in the actual pieces that we've acquired. From everything I'm seeing here, we got a lot of depth pieces and some people that will be marginal improvements on their replacements from last year. I think depth gives good teams the legs to go further in the playoffs, but depth doesn't do a whole lot to improve the ultimate ceiling of a team that's already bad. And so I think those are 2 different positions that the Wings are in. I think they need more talent still. I think specifically the East is very loaded, and they're going to be pretty much buried by the competition there. But it's the start of this massive influx of new talent. So give them a couple years, a couple more pieces added to the puzzle, and they could be there, but I don't think this year's going to be the year.
Good. I think Steve Yzerman might agree with you because he loves a slow build.
That he does.
But I will disagree with you on the depth part you were talking about. I think depth in hockey feels a little bit different when you're putting out like 3 lines of guys. When you're improving your 3rd line, 2nd line, that's pretty important. Like if you're getting a 3rd string point guard for the Pistons, he might never see the court. But if you got a guy, you're going to play almost equal minutes if you're a 3rd string guy as the 2nd and 1st some nights. And so that's pretty important. But you are right. Like, you still need a professional sport, and star power does kind of trump when it comes to championships and whatnot. And we're getting closer. The signing of DeBrincat helps. And, who was it? I think Patrick Kane said he's buddies with DeBrincat and was semi-interested in jumping over to Detroit. He didn't, but that would have been something. I mean, Kane's way past his prime, and I spent my years hating him with the Blackhawks, but I'll take talent when we're trying to make the playoffs. A playoff Red Wings team is a lot of fun, similarly to like a playoff Tigers team. When you get to the play, it's just such a fun time. And talking to you guys, I think hockey's the best sport. Is it my favorite sport? No, like probably college football in general. But is hockey the best sport? Yeah, I think hockey's the best sport. And it deserves more recognition. And I want to just spend more time watching and supporting
It's a
these
more
Red
pure
Wings.
sport.
Yeah, if for no other reason, because the refs are less involved. I mean, they start beating the tar out of each other, and they just stand out of the way.
Refs
Like,
are
they
less
circle
involved.
around them just like, okay, you guys have your fun, and then we'll break it up once it gets too crazy. Like, yeah, there's such purity in that. It's just the pure talent on the ice, and you get to watch them actually decide the outcome of the event, rather than us talking for months on end about how scripted these games are.
And these guys are so tough. Like, there's no prima donnas. And if there's very few prima donnas, or it's football, basketball, you're going to get guys who are such babies. Well, they're fantastic athletes. They're the best of the league. But they're such babies. Like, you got hit, you're going to cry on the floor. Hockey, you're going to get hit, you're going to knock out some teeth, and you're going to be begging to come back in the game. Like, it's awesome. So, the Red Wings
That's not
deserve
to
our
mention-
support.
And that's not even to mention the chirping is that much better in hockey than any other sport. It's just downright hilarious.
Yes, it is really good. Speaking of hockey chirping, I watched Goon, which is a hockey movie similar to like Shoresy. It came out well before Shoresy, and I never watched it before, but I would suggest it to you guys. I enjoyed it a lot. Goon.
I'm always down for a good hockey flick these days. Got
One other.
more question.
Yeah, you do it, Code.
Read
Take
my
it to
mind.
us.
One more question for you guys. Miggy actually just played his last game as a Detroit Tiger yesterday. As of we're recording this pod now, Monday night. Sunday night, played his last game as a Tiger. What a fantastic storied career he has had in Detroit. And so I want to send this podcast off by the three of us talking about one of our favorite memories that Miggy left us on the diamond.
There's so many personal memories when we got to see his
3,000th hit.
3,000th hit. That was one of the coolest sporting events I've been to. That was a lot of fun. And it was just the experience of going to that and the trials of having the night game rained out and trying to get our tickets to see it the next day, staying in Detroit in a sketchy hotel. Just a memory that'll last forever.
Oh, yeah.
And that's due to Miggy and going just to try to see his hit. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, fun weekend with the boys for sure, regardless. But yeah, that's something that Miggy was able to do for this franchise. Something I've heard you say in the past before, Trav, that really had kind of like a playoff game type atmosphere. Something that the city of Detroit hasn't been able to enjoy for many a year. And he was able to do that just by, how fantastic he's been as a player and how he's been able to really unite the city, give us something to cheer for, something to watch. That was a truly fantastic moment. One I certainly will not forget anytime soon because we were there, and I'm really thankful we were able to work that out. Another moment that I had that's always just kind of stuck with me is when he was on base and he was next to Adrian Beltran of the of the Texans, and he's a guy that just doesn't like his head touched. You guys remember that moment much at all? It's just like Iggy would just not, Miggy would not stop touching his head. And then, he just started getting reamed out for touching his head. And then Miggy was just like nodding his head like, oh, okay, I understand. Yeah, sorry. I'm really sorry. And he just puts his hand on his head again. And, like, it was just this back and forth that just I think was the perfect encapsulation of how much he was a troll, but also how he didn't take it too seriously, which sometimes maybe in these latter years we would have wished he would have taken it a bit more seriously. but you can never say that Miggy didn't have fun playing baseball. And so that was he was always fun to watch. That one really always stood out to me, though.
I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say his Triple Crown winning season, because I really feel like Miguel Cabrera is one of the most underrated phenoms to ever play baseball. I mean, the guy is absolutely an all-timer, one of the greatest hitters of all time, and I don't feel like people give him the respect that he deserves. And so the Triple Crown is such a in-your-face gotcha like season. People will talk up players so much. I say, well, yeah, show me their Triple Crown. No one else does stuff like this. It hadn't been done since 1967. And Miguel Cabrera is able to not only get the Triple Crown, but to help lead the Tigers to a World Series appearance. Honestly, I know that that's kind of like a sad ending because they didn't cap it off in the World Series against the Giants. But to be able to sweep the Yankees in the ALCS to go to the World Series, unbelievable. If the Tigers had been able to win that World Series, that would be my all-time favorite sports moment. So it's just that just a clip under perfection, but I still remember it so fondly. It would have meant the world to take that one. But for Miggy to do that, I'll never forget the fact that Miguel Cabrera had the first Triple Crown in like 45 years. And he has that in history. He's one of the greatest hitters of all time. And man, the stats he put up, he had a .330 average, 44 home runs, 139 RBIs. And then the very next year, he won the MVP, of course, his Triple Crown year. He won it the next year by hitting .348 with 44 home runs and 137 RBIs. Man, at his peak, Miggy was a powerhouse. Just unbelievable hitting ability. And I don't think we're going to see anyone that's going to hit the way Miggy did.
Hitting those home runs at Comerica Park, too.
At Comerica, yeah.
He went dead center more than anybody. He went oppo more than anybody. Like, the hitting talent he had was amazing.
Well, there's a reason he's so high on the doubles list. It's not because he's fleet of foot. The guy is slow as molasses, but he has hit many doubles that would have been home runs at many other parks.
Yep. I'm glad you brought up the Triple Crown, because the view of celebrating Miggy's Triple Crown on the Royals scoreboard out in left field is cemented into my brain. Just celebrating that. And I'm glad you brought up they swept the Yankees too, because Miggy's at-bat against Mariano Rivera in, I believe it was that series, was pretty iconic as well. Getting the best of Mariano that year, that was epic. So, what a stud. He will be greatly missed, but I'm so thankful that we had so many years with him.
Well, boys, anything else to share before we wrap things up?
That'll do it.
Alrighty.
That'll do,
well,
big.
I think we've overstayed our 45-minute welcome. It's starting to get late. I'm starting to slur my words. Pretty sure I said that Adrian Beltre played for the Texans and not the Rangers. So yeah, it's probably about time to bid y'all adieu. I gotta go clean up some blood off my carpet. So, thanks for joining us here, folks. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you, Miggy, for all you've done for this great, great city. We will miss you dearly. And thank you for, once again, just joining us on the Jonesy for Sports podcast. Those words are getting slurred again. So we're going to deuce out of here.
How
you
much
guys
blood
keep it
did
real.
you lose?
Peace. Oh, cut it. Cut it.